people are living in poverty and are starving and are obese. You could eat 2,000 calories of all of this food, but yet still be hungry. Have you heard this one? The Pope says obese people are victims of improper dietary habits. Gotta love the Pope weighing in on nutritional information. It's actually quite refreshing to see this being brought up by someone like the Pope. You know, I mean, I'm not a big religious person, but never in a million years did I think that the Pope was going to start commenting on, on man boobs, right? Look at those bad boys. Those are fucking nice. But, I mean, he's right. You know, obese people, in a way, are victims of improper dietary habits. I don't like using the word victim, but in a way, it's like we all kind of are. Because our food choices have been limited by so much corruption within these governments, you know, between the FDA and the USDA and farmer subsidies or corn farmer subsidies and meat subsidies and, lobbyists from sugar companies and, and trans fats and all these different things. I mean, we are, in a way, victims because our food supply is just completely polluted. Our water's completely polluted, not to mention all of the toxic materials from plastics and from building materials and our polluted air. I mean, all of this stuff has effects on our hormones and has effects on the way that food is actually metabolized in our body, the way that our body actually responds to chemicals in food. So in a way, are we victims? Yes, but I hate to use the word victim because then it takes the onus off of personal responsibility. But very interesting to see the Pope bring this up in the first place. So let's go through the article and see what it says. Pope Francis said that there is a distorted relationship between food and nutrition in the world, resulting in both world hunger and obesity, even in poorer nations. I mean, exactly. That's actually very accurate, especially here in America, because we make so much food. Right? Because all of our food is essentially comes from corn and soy and wheat. And from those three crops, we make essentially the entire middle of the grocery store. But the problem comes from the fact that these foods are able to be genetically modified and are able to be essentially chemically manipulated to keep it so that you could eat 2,000 calories of all of this food, but yet still be hungry. Right? And then what do? We go to these poor nations and we bring them this food. And then what do we do to these people? We completely demolish any health that these poor cultures have. You could see this in Weston A. Price's work, where he goes around the world and he sees all of these cultures from all of these different parts of the world that essentially have been infiltrated by American food corporations. And we've just completely decimated their health, in relation to what this is talking about, world hunger. We go to these other countries and we essentially put their farmers out of business by signing these trade deals. And so they can't grow food at sustainable prices anymore in these other countries. And essentially we use our garbage food from the crops that we're growing both here and in their countries. And, the prices are so expensive, people can't afford the prices of food anymore. I see it right here in Puerto Rico. You go to these grocery stores, they're the same grocery stores that you have in the mainland, but the prices are always probably about somewhere between 50 and 30% higher. People are living in poverty and are starving and are obese right here in Puerto Rico simply because of the food situation. In a message Wednesday to the Q Dong-yu, Director General of the United Nations Food and Agriculture, the Pope said that food is ceasing to be a means of subsistence and turning into an avenue of personal destruction. This means that 820 million of the world's people suffer from hunger, while almost 700 million are overweight and victims of improper dietary habits, the pontiff stated in his message for World Food Day. Many of these overweight people, he suggested, are found not in affluent nations, but in developed countries where they eat little but increasingly poorly, since they imitate dietary models imported from developed areas. Francis said that these improper eating habits call for a conversation in our way of living and acting, which must begin with nutrition. Nutritional disorders can only be combated by the cultivation of lifestyles inspired by gratitude for the gifts we received and the adoption of a spirit of temperance, moderation, abstinence, self-control, and solidarity. These nutritional virtues summon us to be a more simple and sober life and unfailing concern for the needs of those around us. I mean, look, it's interesting because I really feel what the Pope is saying, but then he starts kind of going off in this, thing of like gratitude and praying for people and all. It's like, come on, dude. We know the hard reasons why this is happening. This is happening because food companies are so big, they've taken control of parts of the government. And again, I'm not against big business. I'm not against a business building itself up if you have a quality product. But the fact is that a food company like Kellogg's or General Mills or Kraft or Nestle or any of these big, kind of box food corporations, they use the government. They lobby the government. They lobby the FDA, they lobby the USDA so that the USDA could say, or the FDA could have this regulation that 50 grams of added sugar, I believe it is the recommended daily allowance of sugar. 50 grams of added sugar. I got to check that, but I believe that's what I saw in doing some research recently. But any added sugar in your diet is going to lead to both obesity and starvation, because we know that added sugar turns into triglycerides, which turns into fat. And we also know that added sugar spikes and drops your insulin, or spikes your insulin, drops your blood sugar, which leaves you starving. So just the fact that companies that make processed foods are able to get so far into our government so that they can regulate someone like the FDA to make it allowable and make people think that, hey, it's a good idea and I'm doing what the government tells me to do by eating this extra sugar, they're literally causing the problems that the Pope is talking about. Whereas individualism and egocentrism serve only to generate hunger and social inequality, he said, a fraternal solidarity that seeks the common good will promote a healthy relationship with ourselves, with our brothers and sisters, and with the environment. As is his wont, the Pope possessed the problem of malnutrition and hunger are ultimately the byproducts of the free market economy. Oh, man. You could not be more wrong about that, Pope. You could not be more wrong about that. The problem is, like I just said, it's that the government has its hands all over the food industry. If this was a free market economy and companies could come up and basically unseat companies like Kellogg's and General Mills and Kraft and Nestle, if a company could come up, that is maybe even funded by the public, they get their own what do they call it? Investment capital. Somebody invests in a company and a company comes up with much healthier, much less sugar, refined food. You better believe people are going to that. In fact, that's what you see right now with diets name a diet, right? The keto diet, even the vegan diet, the carnivore diet, the vegetarian diet, or just people who are just trying to eat, whole foods like the Whole30 or something like that. People will on their own look for ways to get healthier food. But what you have is the government artificially keeping prices low because of subsidies, and because of taxes. There's no free market in food right now. In fact, food is anything but free market. It's literally dictated by the government. The battle against hunger and malnutrition will not end as long as the logic of the market prevails and the profit is sought at any cost, with the result that food is relegated to a mere commercial product subject to financial speculation and with little regard for its cultural, social, and indeed symbolic importance. It is a cruel, unjust, and paradoxical reality that today there is food for everyone, and yet not everyone has access to it, he said, and that in some areas of the world, food is wasted, discarded, and consumed in excess. To escape from this spiral, he concluded, we need to promote economic institutions and social initiatives which can give the poor regular access to basic resources. Well, you know what's crazy is that the poor and homeless people should be able to eat food that is thrown out from places like restaurants. But there are laws. I know there's a law in New York City where you are not allowed to give homeless people scraps from your restaurant. Homeless people are not allowed to, to eat food that restaurants throw out. Grocery stores have food that's expired. What do? They throw it out, and homeless people are not allowed to get that food. There are actually government regulations, not because of companies, because I would imagine if a business has too many donuts they don't sell, and donuts are a terrible example because they also contribute to the obesity epidemic. But if they have too many donuts or they have too many croissants or they have, too many cheeseburgers and they throw it out, well, guess what? Homeless people are not allowed to eat that. The poor are not allowed to eat that. This is government regulation. This is not free market. If it was free market, why would somebody care? If it's free market, then people aren't going to go to the place that always has expired food. So if the place has expired food, they're going to get rid of all their expired food. What are they going to do with the expired food? Well, they can throw it out, or they can just send it to a food bank and give it to homeless people. But you don't see that happening because specifically of government intervention. So I'd love to know what you think. What are your thoughts on the Pope essentially calling out the nutritional situation all around the world, his duality with his need for nutrition information, but also blaming the free market on the problems with the food, with the worldwide food epidemic? Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, remember, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done yet. So give the video a big thumbs up and keep watching for more videos from the Holistic A-Hole. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.